You know, I promised to treat the gang to a movie tonight. But have you seen the prices at the box office? That's why I love Instant Replay video cassettes. They've got all my favorite movies on cassette and video disc, and Rent-A-Beta for just $8.95 a night. Golly, talk about saving money.
On Folsom at 34th and in the courtyard on Freeport Boulevard.
Oh, Rochester, before you hook up the Rent-A-Beta, be sure to heat up last week's popcorn.
Last week, we explored the world of renting video games. From the strange mom-and-pop shops with the curious names to the big box stores at the center of town, we talked about where, how, and why we forced our parents to spend hard-earned money on games we'd never own. This week, we talk about the games themselves, specifically the memorable ones. Whether it was a love affair birthed from a magical weekend rental or the Saturday ruining disappointment, we all remember those titles that left a mark, if only for a few evenings. And after all of that, we'll take a series of trips down memory lane to see if we can recreate the awe-inspiring anticipation of traversing our favorite video store in search of that one perfect game. Time to step into an era of youthful exploration as we embark upon episode 82, The Memories and Magic of Renting Video Games, Part 2.
Did you know that Sega video games are available for rental from your local video store? Did you know that Sega Master Systems are also available for rental? Did you know that Sega leads the world in the development of new and exciting video games? Did you know that Sega games feature the sharp, clear video images, vibrant colors, and realistic sound you've been craving? Did you know that Sega games have challenges for players from beginners through to masters? Did you know that Sega has a range of titles including the well-known hits Afterburner and Double Dragon? Did you know that fantasy space games, fast action games, and realistic sports simulations are all in the rapidly expanding Sega range? Did you know that each month up to 10 hot new Sega releases will be available for rental? Sega, all kinds of games, all kinds of fun. Sega, let the games begin.
Starting us off on the second leg of our journey through video game rental stores is Celeste from Another Zelda podcast, followed by Lucas White, and then Matt of the Backlog Busters, and then finally the Let's Play Princess share their stories of the games that they fell in love with thanks to their first experiences at their local video game rental store. Did you have any games where you got them? Earthbound obviously was one of them, but any games that you rented and then fell in love with right away? Like, oh, this needs to be something that you'll either A, rent 16 times or B, ask for Christmas.
Oh, gosh. So, the Donkey Kong Country games, and I was drawn more to Donkey Kong Country 2 and Donkey Kong Country 3 because of Dixie Kong.
Sure.
I was, again, she's a female protagonist, and I hated wearing my hair down as a kid, and I always had my hair in a ponytail, and when I saw that, oh my gosh, her ponytail's a weapon? This is amazing.
I love that.
It was just so cool, and the Ninja Warriors, I don't know if you've played that beat 'em up game.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah, they recently re-released it as the Ninja Saviors for the Switch, and they actually enhanced it they added 2 more characters and different modes, so to speak. The only problem with that game is that you can't save it. So, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yep. The days before save states and rewind. The dark days.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But the one that probably has changed my life would be A Link to the Past.
Oh, wow. That was a rental first. Okay.
Yes, that was my first Zelda game ever. My dad pointed out, he said, oh, this looks like a cool game. It looks like something you might like. And I was like, oh, the character has pink hair. That's cute.
Awesome. Fantastic.
So the rest is history. I haven't played every Zelda game, but I've played majority of them, and I'm now part of another Zelda podcast. And
There we go.
picked up the new Switch OLED with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom art, and I cannot wait to walk into GameStop on May 12th, which might be past the time of this recording, but I assume I will have been playing Tears of the Kingdom by the time people are hearing this. So that set my trajectory to be a lifelong Zelda fan.
So you choose the games to play based off of, again, at the video store, you get the wall of games and you're kind of just seeing what's adjacent to the stuff you know, right? You're like, all right, what's by Donkey Kong? What's by this? Were there any games that you found that you fell in love with and were like, I need to own this at some point, even just as a kid or maybe even as an adult where you like thought back like, well, I remember this game when I was at Blockbuster. Was there anything like that you latched onto?
Yeah. Funny we mentioned that because when the Nintendo Switch Online stuff was popping off, there was 1 week where everyone was just like, oh, here's another weird 3 games I never heard of. I'm sitting there just like, yo, it's Claymates.
Oh, Claymates, yes. Yeah. Oh, man.
That was a game that I just loved as a kid. It was
that's
like
cool.
An instant. And it really isn't that great, honestly. But
no, it's not. I was a Clay Fighter kid. That game was not good, but it was fun. Like the graphics were big and bold, and they were cutting each other in half. But it wasn't violent. So my mom was like, "Oh, they're just clay characters, cutting themselves in half and smooshing each other. That's fine." It wasn't Mortal Kombat, So yeah, it's called Claymates. Boy, oh boy, not a great game at all.
No. They had the like really weird music. It was like circus music.
Yes.
Like, run through a coffee filter. And something about that game just really hit my child brain.
That's fun, man. That's super cool.
Think, like the N64 kind of happened a few years later. Well, it happened, 96, but for me, a few years later. I remember like Yoshi's Story was another one that I like rented a lot and eventually picked that up. So that stands out as well.
Then you get the surprise games, like the crappy video store I worked at. The day I took it home, I was like, "This is fun." I took it home because my one buddy was coming over and to spend the night. Ordered pizza, and we're playing Zombies Ate My Neighbors. So,
oh man,
Super Nintendo, the SNES version.
Yeah,
I got the Switch physical sitting here. I got to start playing once,
lovely,
eventually. But I'm still in Zelda mode. So,
are you in Tears of the Kingdom right now?
I mean, I want to say I am, but I've only probably got 3 hours into it because my gaming time has been very limited. But hey,
yeah, I dig that, man. Yeah. I'm trying to find time to do Final Fantasy stuff because I'm in Final Fantasy mode right now. But yeah, dude, I think that's really fun. I mean, zombies, yeah, that's the top tier. Yeah,
that's amazing. Because I just can't get over how I never knew, because if you remember, they had the password system. So if you resumed your game, it put you in the level, but you didn't have all your power-ups that you might have had.
Right.
So you always started with the water pistol. Yeah. And I had no idea, like I had to stop because it was getting late one night and I didn't know until like years later. It was actually, I was at the last level to fight the final boss. And I was getting because I'd go back to him, like, I'm getting my butt kicked. Because I'm like, it's because I have no power ups. There's no power ups to get, but it was because it was the last boss. And I had no idea until years later. So I cannot wait to get into that, to beat that thing's ass.
Dive in, man. It's a classic. It's an absolute classic. So were there any games that you rented, especially early on in those Super Nintendo days? And we could go forward through the history, but that you fell in love with because you rented it?
Yeah, the entire Ape Escape series. At one point, a building very close to my house, like a 5-minute walk, became a Hollywood Video. And I would see this game, Ape Escape. I think I rented it about 2 or 3 times. And that's when I found out, I don't know if anybody else has this problem. I know modern consoles, or let me rephrase that. PlayStation 2 didn't have that problem, but PlayStation 1, at least for me, I rented this game at least 2 or 3 times. And when I got it, my memory card said that I had the save. And because it was a different disc, it didn't copy the save over. So it was like, well, you have a save game, but this isn't the disc that save came from. So guess you're starting back from square one.
Weird. I didn't realize that was a thing.
That
Why?
might just be a me thing.
I don't know. That sounds bizarre, though. Like, oh, this save didn't come from this disc. Like, why would you care? Wow, that stinks. So you would rent something a couple weeks in a row thinking I can, make some progress on it. And sure enough, you try it the next week and that's worse than not getting your game back with your save file on it. Cause I always had that dream, like I'm going to return this game. There's an identifying mark on this cartridge. There's a chip somewhere here in the label. I'm going to go back next week and hopefully I can find that one so I can continue my game. But of course it never, somebody deletes it or something, but wow.
See, and that's the thing, because when we first started talking about this recording session, I remembered only about 3 to 4 games, and now the list has gone up to, oh yeah, I rented like 16 games or something throughout my time. So there might be another SNES game somewhere in the memory palace that I just can't think of.
That's fair.
I know
Maui Mallard's good enough. That's
well, there was one that I looked at so many times. Every time we went to Blockbuster, I looked at this game. And I never got to rent it, but years later I would emulate it and I was just like, oh my god, this game is so good. How did I not rent this? And it was Illusion of Gaia.
Oh wow, yeah. Oh wow. Totally. Yeah, well that's a hard one because the RPGs were tough because you weren't going to get terribly far in a weekend. And at your local rental place was like a 3-day rental kind of thing?
Some were 3. I want to say Hollywood Video was a 5 at that point.
Nice. That is nice. There's no way, even with 5 days, you're going to get very far in Illusion of Gaia.
No, God, no.
Yeah, you're not going to quite. But that's cool. But you never had a chance to check it out.
No, but years later, I emulated it. Same with Hollywood Video. I would, even from the PlayStation 1 all the way up to the GameCube era, that's when I went to Hollywood Video. And I would always see this PlayStation 2 game that looked really cute, but really weird, called Okage Shadow King. And within the last year, I found out that it was on the PSN. So I bought it. Haven't played it yet. But I can definitely say that I will now at some point in my life have access to this game.
You're going to complete that cycle. The cycle will complete. That's really funny. That's really good.
The quest will finally be fulfilled.
That's awesome. The Let's Play Princess and Jodi, a.k.a. Backwhale, continues the conversation, followed by our good buddy and pal Mike Albertin of Games My Mom Found, and then Joe of the SNES's Life podcast closes out this section of the video game rental store conversation. When you went to the rental store, with Hollywood Video or Blockbuster, would you always go straight to the games? Was there like a circuit you did and then ended up there? Or was it beeline for that area?
Even if I knew we weren't going to rent a game, and more times than not, we weren't renting a game. For Hollywood Video, the game area was right next to the front door.
Naturally.
So I would just look just to see if there was anything in the future that I would want to try out. Blockbuster, if memory serves, is a little bit different because it was far to the right from the door. Like just in the back corner, but it was 2 aisles, I think.
Wow. It's pretty big.
Yeah. And it was more Super Nintendo, Game Boy, all that stuff.
So you would go to the rental store, but would there be an ulterior motive? Because if you go into Blockbuster to not rent a game, what a tease that is! Like, why are we here? Was it just go rent movies? Were your parents really into like renting lots of movies?
Yeah, my mom was a person who every once in a while we rent a movie because it was we haven't seen this and we didn't go to the movies to see it, or I'm going to introduce you to this movie. Like, I remember we rented Legend with Tim Curry and and that movie is so good.
I don't know if I've seen it. I know of it, but I don't think I've seen it. I'll have to check it out. I just find that funny that you go to the rental place and you have like the stack of games just out of reach. My mom's like, "Hey, let's rent Legend with Tim Curry," and you're like, "But, Mom, there's There's a wall of games. I could just,
Right.
I could see it. I could almost smell them.
I
They're
think
like right
games were if I
there.
was really good in school or just
okay.
needed something to pass the time.
Nice.
But a lot
So,
of these games have stuck with me in my life.
What other games have stuck with you? In the rental house?
As I say, Ape Escape, Strider.
Strider, yeah.
Which I was trying to rent the second one because I saw it in a magazine that I owned, but they only had the first one, and it was in the Strider 2 case.
What?
So I get home,
out.
and there's Strider 1, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. But then I play, I was just like, oh my god, this is so good. And
It's really good, but not Strider 2.
yeah, years later,
cheat.
I would go buy, what is it, the Way Forward one? The 2014 Strider reboot?
I think so, yeah.
That game's really good. I have Tomba 2 on my list as
Wow.
well. My list is so weird. There's Aragai's God Bless the Ring, which was a fighting game that Square Enix made with Cloud and a bunch of other characters. I have Harry Potter on the Game Boy Advance. I don't know why. Croc 2, Mega Man Network Transmission. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, which I still have a little bit of respect of in my heart.
This is the weirdest list of games I think
know,
I'll hear
it's
all
just
month.
All over the place. I've
That's
got
so good.
5 Mega Man games on here, and they're just Network Transmission, Legends, X8, X5, Extreme on the Game Boy Color.
Wow. Like, I don't think, wow. So you were getting these crazy pulls. And what I think is interesting is that your local Blockbuster had these just crazy pull kind of games.
Either that or Hollywood Video, but yeah, they just had a smorgasbord of different little things.
That's really fun. I think that's actually really cool. Ergie's God Bless the Ring. What? What is this? What is this madness you
Half
speak
of it is a fighting game, but there's a second option on the main menu that is a full-blown RPG.
What is going on here?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a dungeon crawler that is one dungeon, one town, but then the other game mode is a fighting game. And I don't even think their plots are related to each other. It's just 2 games, one disc, and they're both called Air Guys.
That's so weird. I know Tomba. I know the game. I know Tomba. I don't
Tomba's great.
Yeah, it's a great game. Yeah,
They should make a third one.
Yeah, I only know the first 2. I don't think I've ever played a third one. But I know Tomba.
I think those were the only 2. I think the company just went out of business.
Oh,
after
okay.
Tomba
There was
2,
only
which is
2. Okay.
Sad because they're good games.
Yeah, they're fun. Wow, Mega Man on the Game Boy Color. Who would have thought? That's so interesting. So sounds like your rental store was a place for discovery. Again, it sounds like you weren't renting the hits. You know, like it sounds like you really were. Why would you pick up like Tomba 2 or Tomba? Like what about, or why would you pick up? I guess the
like
fighting game
2 or fighting
Croc 2, right? Like why? I mean, that just seems such an interesting thing. Again, you have a stack full like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy and the big hitters of the era, your Street Fighter, but you're grabbing Tomba.
Well, when it came to Maui Mallard, I would say something along the lines of, one Blockbuster, one rental place in a 5-mile radius or something in downtown Boston or Southie.
Yeah.
Everything else is rented out at that point.
That's a good
But
point.
once Hollywood Video opened up, it was more of, like for Tomba and Ape Escape, it's the box art. It just draws you in.
There was 2 games I used to rent there a lot.
Oh yeah? What was that?
So I had GameCube at that point. So I used to rent Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Okay.
To play with my nephew and my cousin, because we all had Game Boy Advances, so we could all hook up and do multiplayer with it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That was only the second time I ever played a Final Fantasy game, actually.
Really? Okay.
And the other one was GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
GoldenEye Rogue Agent. I don't even know this one.
Yeah, so you're playing an agent who ends up killing James Bond in a training accident in the first mission. And you have a little golden eye that lets you do different things, like you could see through walls and different stuff. My favorite in that is, especially in the multiplayer, me and my cousin used to play it a lot. He was my roommate for a while. your eye could see through walls, and you could get a mag rail that could shoot through the walls. So you could just watch people coming up and shoot them. They'd never even know you were there. And it was
that's
a one-hit
so
kill
funny.
with the mag rail.
That's really funny. It's like Deus Ex almost, like Mankind Divided or something, or Human Revolution. That's funny.
But it wasn't a great game, like going back and playing it, just like the original GoldenEye, like going back. But at the time, it was just so much fun. And that's
really funny.
Yeah, it's one of the few games I actually beat that I rent. I rented it 3 or 4 times and played through the whole campaign.
That's really, really interesting. That's fun. So you rented it 3 or 4 times. Wow. Okay. So that was one of those that you kind of fell in love with. And did you beat it with your rentals?
Yeah, like that's the 3 or 4 times to beat it, that campaign. I've rented it more than that. I can say that, like over the few years.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Now, was that at Jumbo, correct?
Yeah, that was the Jumbo Video. So that was the last place I was renting from.
Gotcha. Okay. Were there any games that you rented, and you actually went through a bunch, so maybe this might be a repeat question. Were there any games that you rented that you actually ended up buying because of your rental experience?
Not those. Nintendo, like I guess I never thought that I wouldn't have access to them because they were just right there.
Sure.
But now I did a couple once Blockbuster came.
Okay.
So my brother rented the SNES a couple times, and he got Super Castlevania 4 for that.
Nice. Very nice.
He rented it with it. He did that a few times till he beat it. And I know eventually he bought it. He bought both of that when he got his own Super Nintendo.
Cool.
And Super Mario World, which was the other one we used to rent.
Sure.
But me, there was 2. I would have bought a third one. So I had a Genesis. I had the Nintendo first, but just a couple years later I got the Genesis, and I played them both pretty interchangeably, but Genesis was my favorite. So at Blockbuster I rented Powermonger, Animaniacs, and The Tick all the time.
Oh man. So I know The Tick, the Genesis Tick.
That is so long of a beat 'em up that I've still never finished it. I've gotten to the last world, but that is a long game.
That is a long. Yeah, I've played it briefly, probably at a friend's house or something, or maybe my uncle had The Tick. I can't remember. I never owned a Genesis, so my uncle was the only source of Genesis I had. My best friend too, but I think he might have had The Tick. What's the other one?
Powermonger.
Powermonger.
It's sort of like Populous.
Okay.
Except you actually control a little army that you use to build things, and you get different generals to help you out. That one I never was able to buy because somebody else bought it. Because with Blockbuster, they'd rent the games for so long. Then once they were sold, they'd sell them off, right?
Yeah.
But they sold off all the Powermongers before I got there. So I didn't get that one.
But this does have a lot of Populous DNA in it. This is actually really cool.
Plays a lot like Populous.
Yeah.
I played Populous on Super Nintendo.
Right.
On my brother's Super Nintendo. Because I never have owned a Super Nintendo.
Yeah, because again, I'm looking at screenshots, and people listening to this will not be looking at screenshots.
Yeah.
Just imagine a large topographic map. I don't know if that said that right, but topographic kind of map with and it looks like you can control the elevation of mountains and rivers and streams and lakes and all sorts of stuff. And then I guess there's like an RPG element where I guess you build civilizations and again, just like Populous if you played it on the SNES.
Yeah, so you're trying to build up. Like, you can go and ransack a town and then recruit people out of it. You can capture a town and recruit people.
Okay.
And then you build up your army. So, like, just like in Populous, how you can raise the mountains, you do it all, but your army actually does it. So your buttons control your army, telling them to do it, rather than you being a god controlling it. And you're a general.
That's really cool. And I'm looking at, again, the big part about renting games was the cover art. Because that's, again, what sold you. The cover art for...
that guy, like the pirate guy with the dagger looking over a world.
Yeah, so just to kind of, again, paint the picture for those listening, it says Powermonger along the top, and then there's 4 figures. One that you're looking at these 3 people surrounding like basically a table in first person view. You see your hands all veiny and old, like these old hands. You're ripping this scroll that turns into this landscape. And the 3 corners of it, to the left, you have this glaring old man with a beard and a crown. To the right, you have what can I only describe as a car salesman, as it's just horrible looking, like receding hairline. And then the star of the show is this glaring pirate with an eye patch, sword in the virtual table, glaring at you as if to say, come on, Take my civilization if you dare. This is an awesome picture.
So the pirate guy's actually you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
oh, my
that's
gosh.
who you play. That's your main general.
Wait a minute.
The car salesman guy is like the first other general you can recruit.
So these are actually characters from the game. That's
you
so
actually recruit
good.
them when you defeat them. Like the main guy is you, and the other two guys you defeat and join you. The only thing I can figure is the hands is the one other general that you never get to see. He's the final boss. I never beat that game. It was fun.
How fun. That sounds like a really fun game. And they all have bad hair. They all have either bald or receding hairlines. None of them survived their 30s with their hair intact. I feel you guys. I feel you. I feel all of you. That's so good. Powermonger. And I now want to go through and I want to do like a Twitch stream of all of Jodi's games, these rando games, and just spend an evening doing that on stream. That'd be super fun.
I had a really random collection of games because I'll tell you,
I
in
love
different land, we got whatever we got, right? So you grabbed it
fair.
all.
That's fair. I love that, man.
Yeah, the other one was Animaniacs, which I did buy.
Right.
That one, the Super Nintendo game and the Genesis game are similar, just a couple little level differences. But Yakko, Wacko, and Dot all had different abilities. I remember Yakko was the strong one who could push boxes. Wacko had a hammer that could hit things, and Dot could kiss certain enemies to make them like fall in love with her.
Okay. This is neat. Animaniacs is I seem to remember the SNES again. So you rented a lot of games that you then ended up buying. That you were kind of like your gateway to saying, okay, this is the game I want.
Because my parents were pretty generous in that and buying me games later on. And I think we were at the right time. Like, I want to say I probably got a lot of Super Nintendo games when the systems were changing over and they were dirt cheap. Because I'm pretty sure we didn't spend a lot of, and I remember I had a decent amount of titles. So I think we must have got a lot of stuff for like, $5 here, $10, a lot of cheap stuff.
When did renting games kind of go away for you?
I would say more 64 era, PS1 era. I think I did some, but it wasn't the same. When I was older, and then definitely the PS2 era. I think because renting was still around, but I was done by that time. Also, I had a job, so if I wanted to, I just go buy it.
So you're just going to buy the games anyway. You're not going to...
I don't think I know I rented some 64, but I think 64 was kind of near the end of it too, because like there were some games like Donkey Kong 64, for example. If you rented that, I don't think it came with the expansion pack. You could rent it and not be able to even play it.
Oh, geez, so that's a good point.
So this goes back to kind of the Donkey Kong thing. I rented it enough times that I could have just bought the damn thing. I remember picking up Mario RPG at one point randomly.
Oh, wow.
And that game sucked me in because that was at the end of the NES or SNES's life.
Yes.
You're talking 95, early 96 maybe even. And I remember the graphics were like, holy cow, this looks 3D, it's isometric, like there's space to move around in, and it was just wild to me. I was like, I can't believe they did this on the SNES.
It was definitely one of those showcase type of games where, SNES was competing with I guess at that point, your Sega CDs and your Jaguar almost to a point, and the 32-bit world, and it was still cranking out bangers in 95 and 96. And Super Mario RPG definitely doesn't get enough respect for that. So that was a rental for you. That's cool. That must have really slept up a lot of that weekend.
It did. I remember sitting down and I just played it all weekend long. Of course, I didn't beat it.
No, right.
But I do remember re-renting that one a number of times as well.
Never getting that save though back. Do you know what's even better than that home run hit at the rental video store? That amazing weekend with Chrono Trigger or Yoshi's Island or another incredible game. You know what's even better than that? Hanging with my wonderful, amazing, gorgeous patrons. And if you get the reference, you get the reference. Starting off with Terry Kinnair, Greg Seward of the Player One podcast and Generation 16 series of videos, Games with Coffee, The Let's Play Princess, BT Goebbels, Tim Knowles of The Elitist, Julian of Nerds Without Pants, Seth Sergel of the All End podcast, Dan of Retro Logic, Ryan Payne of Gamers Week podcast, and finally the one and only Pete Harney. If you'd like to join any of these people in their philanthropic efforts in supporting this show, then go to patreon.com/a gamer looks at 40, check out the tiers, and sign up today if you so feel led to. Let's jump back into the episode. All right, so we've all been having fun sharing stories about those amazing games and those just wonderful moments of discovery. Now it's time to share stories of sadness, of woe, of pure depression. The games that you picked up on that rainy Friday night, hoping for a ray of sunshine on the weekend, only to end up with pure and utter disappointment. And surprise, surprise, we have a lot more of those stories than we do of the latter, of the first half of this episode. Starting us off on this saga of sadness is Joe of SNES's Life, followed by Ian, aka TeacherBloke85 on Twitter, and then Celeste, and then Jodi, aka Backlog, return to talk about their stories of weekend misery. Were there any situations when you were in the video store where you got something and within 2 minutes of picking up that title and bringing it home, you knew you just got duped? You just got...
Oh, a million
I'm
times.
sure. Was there a situation that you can recall?
If I had to think of a game specifically that I was like, this was a waste of my money, anything that was licensed. And the few that I really remember was there was a period in like 1993, I think, that for some reason food mascots became a thing, like the cool Spot 7-Up. But I remember a Chester Cheetah game that was just absolute trash. But I rented it because Chester Cheetah was a cool looking cartoon.
Sure. And Cheetos are great. Everyone loves a good Cheeto. How could this possibly be a failure? Oh, no.
Yeah, it was hot garbage.
How long did it take you to realize, after plugging it in, and realize this was a poor choice? And oh no, what am I going to do with my weekend?
I'm sure
Immediate.
It was very, very quick. Yeah. Like, it was one of those games where it just threw enemies at you. You didn't see them coming.
Oh, God.
You know, you took blind jumps. I remember very much that it was awful.
When you picked up that game, was it covered in dust? Like, you're the only kid who was like, saw the Chester Cheetah game and said, ooh, this looks fun. Maybe. I'm teasing, of course, but yeah.
It might have been more of a, I got there late on that Friday.
Oh, sure.
Things left, you know.
Yeah, you had slim pickings. That's true. They did run out of these.
That
things.
was always a danger of the video store.
Show up and now you got $4 burning in your pocket. You got to get something.
Yeah, it was the Super Nintendo games that I rented a lot. I remember very clearly renting just a smattering for you here. Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, Mortal Kombat, R-Type 3, and for some reason, Iggy's Wrecking Balls on the Nintendo 64.
I don't even know that one. What is Iggy's Wrecking Balls?
The only thing...
I gotta look this up while you're
Google
talking.
it. I don't even think I own it, but I do remember renting it. It's some kind of strange psychedelic platformer where you play as a ball wandering along a maze. But the only thing I remember about it was my friend coming over and I said, oh, I've rented this game. Do you want to go? And after about 10 minutes, we were like, this isn't great. Can we play something else?
Oh, no.
But we've rented it, you know, we've got to get our money's worth. And I think for some reason, in a fit of silliness, we just sat there for about 10, 15 minutes, just refreshing the title screen and just making the guy on the title screen shout Iggy's Wrecking Balls and then go into the character select to make it go, who's it gonna be? And that's the only thing I remember about the game is Iggy's Wrecking Balls. Who's it gonna be?
I love that. That's so good.
In fact, I could text my friend right now and just say Iggy's Wrecking Balls, and I swear within 10 minutes he will reply and say, who's it going to be?
Who's it going to be? Oh, that's so good. I love that story.
I'm going to do that.
Go for it, man. Go for it. While you're texting your friend Iggy's Wrecking Balls, I was going to ask you about games that did not live up to the hype. So when you go and rent games, you get something, you bring it home, it's Iggy's Wrecking Balls. I'm looking at the cover. I don't know why you picked this game, but for some reason, young Ian just decided, hey, let's go for it.
I think it was a case that I'd rented everything in the store over the previous weeks. There's a game I haven't played.
Oh, that's so funny. And Iggy's Wrecking Ball is just, by the way, spelled RECKIN with the apostrophe. So it's not WREC. It's Wreckin'. That's so weird. All right.
It's heckin' Wreckin'.
It's Wreckin'. I reckon it's Wreckin'. So so what other games did you pick up that you were like, oh no, I made an error?
Home Alone 2 Lost in New York.
Yeah, I was going to say that doesn't sound like it's very good.
It was what it was. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I've just had a kind of traumatic flashback because I remember renting Wayne's World on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, no. That's no good.
Hiya, Wayne. Not.
And I love how this show brings up traumatic memories. This is what this is designed to do. This is the goal here on A Gamer Looks at 40. I find it really funny that that was always the biggest risk. Yeah, Wayne's World, those Ren and Stimpy games.
Oh, I actually had Ren and Stimpy Vidiots.
Yeah, I had one of them.
I don't have it anymore. I think I finished Vidiots in an afternoon and traded it in. But
sure,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah,
So it's interesting because in that era, we always remember the Super Nintendo classics, but the Super Nintendo had a wide variety of just generic clones, floaty physics and bad hit detection, picking up games, picking up items, just very SNES, .exe type games. They're all basically the same, the same thing. So yeah, I can see a lot of those generic games being the ones you pick up by mistake. With our last few minutes, I would like to go back to the rental conversation. Were there any just dire disappointments where you got that game on the strength of the cover and you're like, oh no, my weekend's ruined?
Well, this was a rookie mistake. I rented Yoshi's Safari, and I did not know I needed the Super Scope.
Oh boy!
And I kind of wish that somebody, I don't know, I wish the employee would have said, do you have the Super Scope? Or I wish that it had been included with the game, because all I could do was load it up and there's the start menu.
Oh no.
Oh, that was a disappointment, because it's like, well, my parents just wasted however much money.
Oh my goodness.
I think.
Were you? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
We might have returned it. I don't remember. I just remember thinking, well,
there goes that.
Yes.
Cool. Guess I'll do homework.
Oh gosh.
No, of course not. That wasn't the answer.
Gosh. So before we bought the Nintendo 64, we actually used to rent the system. Did you know you could do that?
I didn't until I had these conversations. I vaguely remembered that as people were talking about it, but I didn't realize how prevalent it was. Yeah.
And I know I said earlier, like every Friday was video game rental or movie rental night, and it's possible that we skipped some nights. I mean, that was, oh gosh, forever ago. I'm sure if we were going on vacation or had something planned for the weekend, my parents weren't going to rent anything, but we rented the Nintendo 64 a lot before buying it. And one of the Nintendo 64 games we rented, that it was towards the end of the Nintendo 64 life cycle, there was this Powerpuff Girls 64 game, and my sisters and I were huge fans of the Powerpuff Girls back then. Aww. And it actually worked out because my favorite color is pink, my middle sister's favorite color is green, youngest sister's favorite color is blue. So
perfect.
Do you remember as a kid, like your favorite color was kind of your identity?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
What was your favorite color, or is your favorite color?
Red, probably, because I'm a huge hockey fan and I'm a fan of the New Jersey Devils. Ooh. So red always, if ever I'm like customizing a character in a game still, I lean towards red. Like red hues and tones. Always. I still do. I don't know why. It's a very appealing color to me. I don't know why.
There is a red rowdy rough boy in one of the Powerpuff Girls episodes. So that could be your match.
That's my match. That's it. That works out perfectly.
But that game was very disappointing. Like that as kids, almost anything can entertain you. But I remember all three of us were like, this is terrible. Like the movements aren't great. It's slow. It just feels terrible.
I love that you're 100% right, because again, that era was still the era of the licensed games were bad trope. I remember for me was Ren and Stimpy. It was a Ren and Stimpy game, and it's just terrible. It's just unwieldy. It's like SNES game .zip or .exe. Like it's just a template they slapped things on top of and made it work.
Was that the one on Super Nintendo where I think you even go into Stimpy's stomach or something?
You go into Ren's mouth and you're dodging like teeth and nerve endings because it's based off of that episode, which is horrifying. It has made me loathe dentists ever since. I can't. It's so grody. Yes, I don't think you might go into a stomach though. I think you might. You might. It's been a while, but yeah, I think you might actually.
Ugh. Oh, thank you. Ugh.
Did you, obviously, you sounds like you had a very eclectic experience renting games, which is great. I love that because, again, in these little bite-sized moments of games that kind of stick with you, do you have any moments of just pure disappointment? Like you got the game, you brought it home, pop it in, you're like, oh no, within 10 minutes, your weekend is ruined.
Yeah, Total Recall.
Total Recall, that's the one.
Definitely.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah. Yes, it didn't take you long with Total Recall.
No, I played it. I must have played it for a half an hour trying.
Oh.
And I remember I actually just took it out and just played the games I already owned. I'm like, no, forget it. Like, this isn't even worth trying.
No. Oh, man, that's the worst.
And the worst, but now that one, yeah, right away. But Heroes of the Lance was a big disappointment just because, like I said, I really wanted to play this. I had seen my brother play it. I thought it was such a cool game. I actually think if I went back now and understood it, maybe it would be a cool game.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, like I can't guarantee it because it's a long time ago. It's an action game from early 90s, so it's only going to be so anyway. But yeah, I was disappointed just because I really wanted to love it. And I loved other D&D games because I had Hillsfire on the PC.
Okay.
And I loved that game, which is hilarious because it's a really bad just assortment of mini games. Everybody hates it, but it's one of my favorite games just because I grew up with that was my first RPG.
Right.
So I'm like, really thought this was going to be the same, and it wasn't. So that was a pretty big disappointment just because it wasn't what I thought it was.
That's tough. And it sounds like you rented lots of games multiple times, which I find a fascinating phenomenon. I really do. Because again, even as kids, we probably realize, hey, I could probably just buy this game. The amount of money I'm plunking down on renting it.
I probably could have, though I don't know where I would have. This is the problem, because like when games came around our way, it most of the time was Zellers selling them, which is like a Kmart type store.
Okay.
That's where I got most of my games growing up. So like if you didn't pick them up in the first couple of months, they were gone forever. Like,
oh wow.
As far as I know, you never saw them. Like I know I was a big Genesis kid. Like I said, I wanted a Sega Saturn, never saw one.
Really? Okay. Huh.
Yeah, just saw a Dreamcast once. Guy told me it wasn't any good. So I just never, that's why I went from Genesis. I didn't buy another game console until I got a GameCube.
Wow,
I just never saw what I wanted. Could have probably bought a Super Nintendo at some point, but I had played enough Super Nintendo at other people's places that didn't feel like I needed one.
Got it. That's fair. That's interesting because Newfoundland was way. I don't know much about that part of Canada, but it's out there.
Yeah, it's fairly it was fairly rural, even for being in the city. Yeah. Like we go to St. John's once a year. That's the big city. There's 500,000 people. Right.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. Like there, I probably could get more stuff. But now I grew up. My parents were quite a bit older than most people's parents. Like when I was a kid, they were already in their 50s.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't much fun for them to bring me to those kind of places. Like so, I got into Game Boy more. So never really bought much myself.
Very nice.
The rentals were always something I could just go and do on my own. Right, 10-minute walk.
You want more bad stories? You got more bad stories, all courtesy of the Let's Play Princess, followed by Matt of Backlog Busters, and then finally the wonderful Mike Albertin return to share more tales of rental game woe. So going forward from Super Nintendo, you obviously were playing, you mentioned Game Boy and PS1. What other treasures or abject failures came from your discoveries?
Oh God, abject failures. The Lilo and Stitch PlayStation 1 game isn't all that great.
What is this now? Lilo and Stitch?
Lilo and Stitch has a PlayStation 1 game that is very much a Crash clone.
Okay. Crash is the kind of game I never had a PS1 as a kid, so I never had I missed that whole generation of games.
Oh God, I rented Crash 2.
Did you really? Oh my gosh.
I owned Crash 3 and I rented Crash 2. That's right. I'm remembering stuff even as we're recording.
See, the memories are flooding back. I never understood quite why people like Crash so much. I have to play it. I think I tried to play it relatively recently. I was like, I don't know. I just don't quite get this. But I do.
Play them backwards.
What's that?
Play them backwards. I'm not even joking. Start with 3 and then go 2 and 1. They get harder the earlier you go.
Okay, that might be what it was. Maybe it was just, I just always felt like I didn't have enough time to make a decision. I got this boulder coming at me and I'm running towards the screen. Again, it was one of those things where I never quite understood, but I know people like it. I can't imagine a licensed Lilo and Stitch version of a Crash Bandicoot game. That can't be good.
It's okay, but it's not the best.
Fair. That's fair. Cool. What else did you conjure up in that era, in those eras?
Around that era, Spyro 3.
Ooh, okay.
That was the only Spyro game I actually got to really, really play, which is weird. And there's actually a little bit of backstory of why I rented it.
Go for it.
So, I owned Crash 3 growing up. Crash 3 actually has a demo inside of it for Spyro 1. And we also had a demo disc for the PlayStation 1 that had different things like Medieval, a trailer for Parasite Eve, Test Drive 5, I think. But they also had a demo for Spyro. So I've had these 2 Spyro demos in my life. For Spyro 1, anyway. I was like, I really want to play this game at some point. Go to Hollywood Video. 1 and 2 are both rented out, but 3 is there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Sure. What am I missing?
You're right. Perfect.
So I rented it. I'm going to be honest. I think there are some people who would go, Spyro 3, It's good. It holds up. Even with the Reignited trilogy, it is such a good game. Okay. Whether or not you think 2 or 3 is better, 3's still extremely solid.
Okay. That's fair. I think that's actually really that's interesting. I don't know. I know the Spyro games a little bit, but I don't have a huge connection to them. So that's gonna be cool. So that's nice that you're able to get a game that you weren't expecting, but hey, this will be fine. I'm not missing much backstory, I'm sure, from Spyro 1, Spyro 2. Spyro 3, I'm sure, is gonna be fine. Yeah. Very cool. A big part of the rental experience, of course, is the discovery, right? And sounds like, again, for you who worked there, and of course, frequented and were a patron, were there any games that you picked up that were just utter disappointments? You got it home, and within 15 minutes, you knew your gift certificate was wasted, your money was gone, and there was no getting it back. Does any of that, do you have any recollections of that kind of situation?
Oh, there's just way too many. I got to figure out the ones that were actually... I mean, there's some you expected them to not be good, so there was no surprise. Actually, one, it's because I couldn't comprehend it. It was one of the SNES original launches, was Populous.
Populous. That's a baffling game.
That was... when you're 16 or so, you don't really... I mean, they give you an instruction manual, but it's the photocopy of it. That's if they still had it, they'd copy it and staple it together. There was no internet to find out, what am I doing in this? It was just a little obtuse for someone who's 16 years old. Here, play this computer game.
Wow.
Like, what am I trying to do?
What is this? It's a pretty neat game when you start actually figuring it out, but yeah, the difficulty curve on that's ridiculous. That would be a terrible rental. Terrible.
The best bad rentals I would get would be, I wouldn't get them myself. My brother worked at a grocery store a couple towns over. When he was still living, like he was going to college and working at the grocery store called Giant Eagle. And they had a video store inside the grocery store. And he would just grab games because if he'd worked one day, they'd let him, I knew they'd let him take them home for free. But the games he was getting usually weren't good. It was like Godzilla.
Oh, no.
Defenders of Dynatron City. Was that the name of it? It was an old cartoon. It's just a really
Wait a minute.
bad
Okay,
game.
hang on. I'm going to run to the internet.
Defenders? Was it Defend? Oh, that was really bad.
No. Defenders of Dynatron City. What in God's name is this?
It was a cartoon on like Fox or something. It was just bad.
what a rabbit hole I'm now going to get into. I've never even heard of this.
Dynatron. I think it is Dynatron. Yeah, wow.
It is Dynatron. Oh, yeah, I'm looking at it.
Oh, yeah. It's wow.
Wow, he's out. Hang on, I'm just pulling up screenshots. This looks heinous. The one shot I have here is it's like a city scene, but they only know how to use like red, browns, and oranges and yellows. There's no other color in this shot other than a blue sky and a purple dude and a very poorly drawn black and white robot looking thing.
Yep.
Oh, what a mess.
Oh,
what a mess.
It's bad. I remember him bringing home, like, on the Super Nintendo era, he brought home, like, Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. I know some people like that, but that game is just not good.
I have a fondness for Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball. I get it.
But at the same time, like, I didn't own a Genesis, but like, my sister's boyfriend, you know, like, at the time after he kind of moved on from it and was playing his, you know, this N64 and stuff, he didn't give it to me, but it was at my house. But at the same time, my brother somehow came home with like Mutant League Football.
Yeah, Mutant League Football.
And Mutant League Hockey, which are just amazing games.
Yes, those are great.
And it's like, I don't know.
Those are great.
You get that, and then he'd bring home like, you know, what was the one? I don't know why a lot of people liked it, that TNC Surf Design.
People love TNC Surf Design.
I never liked it.
I never got it. I think I've played it relatively recently. I think I enjoyed it more. I think I had a cousin who had TNC Surf Design. I'm trying to remember, but I don't remember ever getting it.
Yeah, because like there was the skateboard stuff, but then like the surfing is like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah, constantly falling onto surfing.
It was LJN, so I mean, leave it at that.
Yeah. I've seen a few videos on TNC Surf Design. You're right. It's one of those games that people have a lot of fondness for that I just don't. I have a hazy recollection. There were a lot of those kind of games.
But then like there was also like Summer Games, which was okay, but the Commodore version was way superior and controlled way better.
I didn't know there was a Commodore version.
Yeah, that was made when it was made by. Was it Epix? Was that the name of the company for the Commodore version? Because I remember you could pick your country. They had the Epix country. I just remember. I don't know why I remember that. I just do. For California games. We had all this. We had California games, Summer Games 1 and 2, Winter Games, World Games, all that stuff. Those were a lot of
all
fun,
the games. He had all the Olympics. Yeah, that's funny. That's really good, man.
I do have a game I remember renting that upset me. I rented once and never again.
Okay.
Mario's Time Machine. I don't know if you ever played those or not. They're like I forget the term. Educational games.
Yeah, and info or edutainment.
Yeah, and I rented that, and I remember being so upset. Mario's missing in Mario's Time Machine. Mario's missing for sure because I couldn't figure out what the fuck to do. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I'm trying to do this and going things like nothing makes sense. I remember that was probably one of my most upset rentals ever was Mario was missing because I was excited to try it. I did beat that game years later, a couple years ago before the podcast on my phone. I downloaded the ROMs and looked up guides and played. And they're not that bad. When you know what to do, they're not that bad.
So here's the interesting thing about Mario's Time Machine because I looked up the cover as you were discussing it, and I can see why you would be upset because the cover has Mario in his time machine hurtling through space and time. There's Abraham Lincoln's hanging out. There's calendar things. There's Einstein numbers, kites, clocks. And it says travel with Mario on a learning adventure through time. And I'm sure you as a child did not read the part where it said learning adventure.
No,
you just read travel with Mario on an adventure through time.
I just saw Mario's Time Machine. I think that's all I saw.
You just saw Mario's Time Machine. You saw our favorite plumber, and you said, I'm going to rent this game. And you missed a key component to that box, which is learning.
Well, the learning part would be fine. That game is very confusing. That was my problem with it.
Yeah.
It's confusing to figure out what to do. You got to talk to certain NPCs, and they'll give you clues, and you got to go talk and you got to fill in things. And I just remember being like, this is just not fun. Like, and it's also really hard to figure out what to do, I thought, as a kid. So, nor did I want to read about things and then, fill in the blanks.
And that's what I'm saying, because it sounds like, because this is not Carmen Sandiego, where learning is kind of fun. This is Mario, and to have Mario bastardized in such a way where they're trying to teach you things, I can't imagine you as a kid taking this home and realizing, oh, it wants me to know when Ben Franklin was a thing. I don't know. I want to jump through portals and go through time with Mario. I don't want to learn these facts and figures.
I mean, it could have been fun. Mario missing another one that was really annoying that I was real let down with, for sure.
They're also the other thing you missed too was Software Toolworks was a developer, and I think they mainly did a lot of educational titles. So if you knew the learning software like in your school and you saw that little horse and buggy Software Toolworks, you may have been hinted that, oh, this might be a thing that's trying to teach me something. Damn it.
I went and beat both once, and they were okay. They're okay experiences. It just, was not what I wanted.
People are coming from everywhere to play the $10 million blockbuster video game. Because the more you play, the more you can win. Win instantly or collect game pieces to win. Trips to the new Universal Studios Florida where you can see the stars and ride the movies. With transportation by US Air, America's most frequent flyer. Or up to $100,000 in cash. Millions of prizes in the $10 million blockbuster video game. Drop in and play. Blockbuster video. Wow, what a difference.
And finally, as we close out our 2-part episode on renting video games, let's take a moment to really think back, put ourselves in the shoes of 10 or 12 or 8-year-old us, and see if we can really get into the brain of what it was like and really get into the moment of what it was like roaming through the halls of our favorite video game stores. Starting us off on this final exploration is Matt, who shares a bit about what it was like to work at one of those rental places, followed by Brian, and then Celeste. Now, I'd love to chat a bit about your working at the rental store. When were you working there? Like what year and kind of what age were you?
I started in the summer. I turned 16, so that was from 96 up until I left for college.
Okay.
So for about basically 2 years.
Okay, so like N64 era, early PlayStation. I don't know if Xbox
my video stores that they didn't have the video stores that had a lot of NES, and they transitioned late to the Super Nintendo and Genesis.
Oh wow, okay.
And then they started getting N64 stuff and PS1 stuff, but
not during the time you were there.
A little bit, but it was few and far between because kind of like I said, like from if you ever seen the movie Clerks, Randall goes, I worked, this is the crappy video store. That's the one I worked at.
You worked at the crappy, I love that. That's so good. I'm from Northern New Jersey, so for me, Clerks is an unassailable movie that basically dictated life for me for quite some time. So yeah, I'm well acquainted with the RSV video store. So you were mainly still in the Super Nintendo era, but again, great era to be renting games at. What was the vibe inside the rental store like? Again, you said you worked at the crappy one.
Yes.
Did you have a lot of friends who stopped by? What kind of clientele came in?
I mean, from a small town, you get who knew. Pretty much, it was like my video store was quote unquote more centrally located in the town, and the other one was Our Town Video. That was the video store still open. That was the better one. That was on the south side of town. Okay. But keep in mind, this town was probably only maybe 2 square miles in area, so it's not that big of a town. See, our town had the back room for the adult videos. Mine didn't have that. Okay. I get a lot of people coming in, hey, do you have adult videos? Like, nope.
Wait a minute, hold the phone. It was time out for 1 second. You actually had people verbalize to you, hi 16-year-old, where is the adult movie section in this video store? God, I'd be so embarrassed.
I'd get it all the time. It was usually people that I wouldn't see that often, or they were new because you had to sign up for a membership back then. So.
Right. Yes, you did. Yes.
You get a member ID number on ours. Even where I worked, what they did is they had the movie case or the game case on the shelf, and it had the little ticket inside the sleeve in the front. You take the sleeve up and had a number and bring it up to the desk, and then I'd have to, all right, you got this number, go to the shelf, pull it off, run it through the computer system.
Boom.
Yep.
That's it. That's so interesting. I love that. So you had a lot of, small town, lots of locals, kind of everybody knew everything.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So you again, like rent, you must have gotten a real game education and movie education from being there just for sounds like a few years.
Yeah, I got more of a movie education than a game education.
Gotcha.
To be honest.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because again, was it primarily a movie place?
Yeah, it was like the movie place, and they had the one section on the wall that had video games.
Nice. Very nice. That's cool. Do you keep in contact with anybody in that world? And the reason I ask that is because I've had some interviews with people who worked in video stores, not rental, but one in particular, and they have very tight-knit relationships with the people they worked with. I'm curious if that's like anthemic to, or not anthemic, but systemic to kind of that working environment, or how was the work environment?
I worked by myself. I mean, it was a small video store, so literally, like generally, I'd be honest, I worked weekends and Wednesday nights, and then occasionally if someone couldn't make it, they'd call me. Because honestly, the video store was 2 blocks from my house, so it was not a big deal.
Gotcha. So you were literally Randall. You were Randall.
I was Randall.
Clark,
like it would be like I'd get in to come into work, and usually it's the owner's this old guy, and he would usually be working, and he'd be there for 5 minutes. All right, make sure keep an eye on this. He'd go over the holds, because if anyone reserved anything, it was written on notebook paper. It wasn't like in the computer system for stuff they keep out. That. And within 5 minutes of me walking through the door, he was gone.
Wow. That was it. And here's the kid, 16 years old. Here's the keys. That's amazing.
That's exactly what it was.
That's amazing. And you being a good kid, you just, I'm going to close this door down and make sure I did well. That's really fun. I love that.
I remember, I mean, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have phrased it this way, my 10 to 12 year old self, but it was like, I've got business here. Like I've got something they have I want, and I'm going to find it. It's not like there's a specific section, I go there, there's something for me, mom and dad, they'll find something to rent, and they're looking at movies, whatever, I've got my own business to attend to. And you became, I was the expert, a expert of one, which is to say, what game do you want to get? This one. Oh, okay. And then that was that. It was just this cartridge, you mentioned wherever it got to Blockbuster, then the cartridges were actually in, the clear plastic case.
Sure.
So,
yes,
you may not have much more to go on, but at least it was more official. This was something that, you could at least, drop it on the bottom of the floor in the van and, feel like you could still find it later and it would be intact. Or I mean, even, if it was a good store, then they actually, took care of it, and there was the manual in there, which you knew you
gold.
You knew you hit the jackpot, and you just wanted to thank. I mean, whoever had it before, and the whoever started the chain of taking care of it, because there was the classic "be kind, rewind." You felt like you were doing a service, and I mean, let's be honest, you were. If you rewound it and returned it, there wasn't something that was clever and rhymed like that for the video game rentals, but I wish there was, because it was like, if you had the actual manual, it was like, and then that manual stayed with me all the time, because I wasn't playing the game, so I was learning about the game. So I was reading it at school, or I was, taking it with me, or I would, have it at, breakfast. You're trying to, getting your cereal before the bus comes. You've got the manual there, and it's like, okay. I gotta, even though you already probably read it, 3 times through, and it's not much more complicated than, a jump, it was still like, all right, there's stuff I can glean from here,
and you're putting yourself in the world, right?
Right.
You're in an age where you can't play games all day.
Yeah.
That you're using that to it's like extra value you're extracting from your rental. That's actually a really cool thought, because I'm trying to remember if we had. I'm sure we did for certain games, like you said, but of course, evil children would swipe them, not return them. Then now you're boned. How do I do this thing in the game?
Right.
That's actually that's a pretty cool memory. I like that. That's really fun. I would like you right now, if you can, to kind of put yourself in your shoes as a kid walking into the video store. It's a Friday after school. You said like 3:30. It's like 4 o'clock. There's probably other kids in there doing the same thing with their parents. I would love for you just to see if you can get to that emotional state. Like, what was the feeling of being in that environment, surrounded by games? I'm assuming you went right to that section unless you kind of walked around. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear what you think you would be feeling like at that moment.
Oh, just excitement, just pure excitement. Like, I love to read as well. And my senior paper in college was I compared video games to story. Like I talked about the storytelling and books. I called it virtual storybooks and things like that.
Cool.
Just an interactive adventure awaiting me. And like I remember talking with friends at lunch and being upset. I was like, are you the one who rented Castlevania 64? Because it was missing from from the shelves and I wanted to play it this weekend.
You could. Oh, that's so good. I love that.
But yes, just excitement, excitement and comfort, just simpler times. And I kind of think I realized why adults seemed, not that every adult was grumpy all the time, but sure. You have so much more on your mind as an adult. And I'm sure you can relate to this. You're not just thinking about, oh, what fun things do I want to do? Like you mentioned, having a family and responsibilities, the mental load of thinking about what do I need from the grocery store? What am I doing at work today? What appointments do I have coming up? Oh, what bills are coming up? Oh, it's tax season. I got to pay the taxes by this time.
Right.
As a kid, time just seemed slower because you had to focus on maybe 2 things.
Right. You had 2 things to worry about, and both of those were usually pretty fun. And again, as you get older, even as when you get to high school, you worry about college entrance and you worry about SATs and you worry about tests, and the grades actually matter,
Yes.
But I think in that sweet spot of especially like late elementary, maybe early middle school, especially earlier, there just wasn't as much. And I think even kids today, they have a lot more to deal with than we did as kids, I think.
I think so too.
Just seeing what my son goes through, and I just go through, but just like he's in first grade and he's got like assessments and he's got all that stuff. And it's good to a certain extent, but there is a bit of a less runway for innocence, which I think is unfortunate.
That's a great point. My youngest godson is in first grade as well. And I just want to tell him, and I'm sure you feel this way about your son, like, yes, I want you to do well in school and you have so many talents, but your worth is not measured strictly by your test scores. And there's so much about you that is beautiful and wonderful and we treasure. And I don't know, I just wish I could convey that to all children.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's like my 2 main things for my son is that work hard, or try hard at least. Try hard and be kind. If you can do both of those 2 things, you will be ahead of the game for anything else you want to do. If you just try hard and be kind, absolutely. The results of those things are sometimes out of your control. But just try hard and be kind. That's kind of like the 2 things. Don't be a jerk.
Oh,
don't be a jerk. It's harder than it sounds, but. Yeah.
I've been hired for jobs because of my personality, actually. Yeah. Like my skills, yes, they cared, but they were also like, I can tell you're going to get along with the team and I admire your personality and stuff. And it's hard to convey that until you're going through it, but
totally.
Yeah.
You can teach most people to do most things. It's hard to teach people not to be personable and to just fit in an environment. Yeah, totally.
100%.
Awesome. See, this show's all about getting into the deep. we will get. I enjoyed plumbing these depths. If you've been listening to this show for any length of time, you know I am always willing to dive deep into these subjects to really get to the heart of what makes video game fandom tick. It's a thing I love to do. Finally, let's finish up with Jodi, followed by Ian, and then the Let's Play Princess brings us home as the store is just about to close. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit, just kind of like almost, I don't know, I don't want to say it's like a mental exercise, but I'd love for you to kind of see if you can put yourself in the shoes of young Jodi. You make that 10-minute walk. You're excited. It's Monday because you're going to rent a game on Monday for 5 days, or even on the weekend for a weekend rental. And you walk into that. I want to do convenience store. I don't know why. I love the idea of renting games at a convenience store. It's not something I ever did. You walk in and like, what's the excitement? What's the feeling? What are the expectations? I'd love to kind of get a taste of what that felt like for you.
All right. Well, I can still picture Hilltop. Spent a lot of time there growing up. That was my mom used to send me down to pick up stuff. So you go through and like you just walk in the door. I'd say hi to Neville because I knew the owners. And yeah, mom would be going to get something in the grocery aisle, go and get some salt beef or something. And I'm like, okay. So I'm just would bypass. I'd always glance through the movies because, new kids movies there too on the way through. Yeah. And yeah, just go see if there's anything new. Not very often did something pop up new, but once in a while, like I remember Gremlins 2 that came out when Gremlins did. So it was always to go see, is there just something new there? And even the couple Super Nintendos. I remember there was a couple Super Nintendo games he had up above. I never bought them, but I remember reading through the boxes for like Super Mario World.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think he had the box for Secret of Mana.
Ooh, okay.
I think that was one of the ones he had, which is sort of, like they were sort of random games that he had. I have no idea how Neville ever got his games. But
probably just bought them and just slapped them on there. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was always just an excitement to see. And actually, there was one I completely forgot. There was a submarine game that showed up at one point. I have no idea what it was called. It wasn't even great gameplay. Like you just played as a submarine going around like in World War II or something and looking through the periscope to see other subs to shoot them. I remember when I saw it, I'm like, oh, there was something new. I was super excited. And I remember I rented that like 2 or 3 weekends in a row, even though it wasn't that great.
See, it was something new though. And that's what I think I'm catching from this kind of this little picture you're painting is that it was something new. It was the quest for something new. And you said you went to like the movie section and you're like, oh, we had new movies coming out and your well-worn favorite. You say hi to Total Recall. You know that movie very well. And you walk by and then you go to corner and like, what's new here? And even if there was nothing new, you had favorites and old friends to go to.
The feeling of walking into one of those shops. Usually it was, as I say, on a Friday evening, afternoon, after school. And chances are, if my granddad had taken me, we'd just go straight to the games. If my parents had taken me, they'd rent a movie for themselves. They'd possibly let me rent a movie as well, or a game. And so we kind of go our separate ways in those smaller shops. But I remember when Blockbuster opened, I would spend hours in there just looking down the racks at all the different games, all the different movies, the new releases, the anime section, which I was heavily into at the time. And, I still thank Blockbuster for a lot of the collection that I do have, because so many of those games that were on little deals, like 3 for £10 or something. And, I'd take a chance on some of those, and I probably wouldn't have so many strange games in my collection. Yeah. I do remember picking up one on the PlayStation 3 called Eat Lead, which I didn't think was going to be all that great, but I got it home. I really enjoyed it.
When it comes to renting, I've been asking my guests to do this to some success, some not, but that's okay. It's a bit of a challenging exercise. I want you to kind of put yourself back into the mindset of when you were younger and going into that Blockbuster or Hollywood Video and try to describe the feeling you would get when you walk in there, the excitement or the energy. I just kind of want to put us in that place a bit and just try to recapture what that was like. Because I think a lot of people, if they're younger listening to this, who never had that experience, may not get it. It's like, I go to Redbox and I, put my credit card in and I get a movie. It was different. It was totally different back in those days. Different. So yeah.
Man, going to a Hollywood Video or a Blockbuster is almost this magical euphoric thing. Because when you go there, you have no idea what they're going to have in stock. You have no idea sometimes what you're even looking for. You just know you want to rent a movie and you don't know what it is. And nowadays, sure, Netflix has the shuffle mechanic in it, but that's not the same. Walking up and down the aisles, looking at your options, and having those employees there who are actual cinephiles or gamers say, yes, if you're looking for something like that, there's a movie over in the fantasy section that is just like it, same actor, but with this type of plot. And I feel like Hollywood Video and Blockbuster had candy that you never see anywhere anymore and were exclusive to those places. I remember getting candy, like beepers that had little hard candies inside of them. I remember getting the Band-Aid bubble gum there.
Whoa.
And even if you're just getting popcorn from a Blockbuster or Hollywood Video.
Yes.
It tastes different, I swear to God, from buying a box at your local store and putting it in the microwave. There is something so different about those places that affects your senses, even to the point of when you're home and you're eating the food or watching the movie, those sense changes are still there with you.
Whenever I do episodes like this, I always try to take a step back and make sure that I don't get too schmaltzy. I don't get too emotional, or I want to say even borderline corny. Even though that's kind of who I am. I'm a schmaltzy, corny 40-year-old dad. That's kind of where I live right now. And I always try to keep it grounded, though. I don't want this to become huge nostalgia fests where we're just gushing and gushing and gushing. But when it comes to renting video games, I don't think I can. I don't think there is a real limit to the emotional investment that I can put into this kind of episode. And based on the conversations I had over the last few months, my guests feel the exact same way. And after listening to these conversations and kind of going through the audio and hearing these stories for the first, second, or fifth or sixth time in some situations, I realized that there was very few things more personal and empowering as a kid than going to a rental store and picking a game. For Christmas, Mom bought the games, or Dad bought the games. When I went to friends' houses, they had a small library. There are 10 or 15 games to choose from. But when you walked into a rental store, there were hundreds of titles available. And the idea that all of this amazing entertainment was just around us and at our fingertips was overwhelming. It was physical, tangible, personal, and yeah, pretty emotional. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of A Gamer Looks at 40. If you haven't done so already, check me out on Twitter at A Gamer Looks at 40. And if you haven't done so already, please leave a like, rating, or review on your pod player of choice. Greatly helps the algorithms find this show and spread it out to ear holes everywhere. Thanks again for checking out the show, and until next time, just be kind to yourselves and each other.
Everybody comes to Hagen's for the best selection of movies anywhere.
Do you have Oliver Stone's Vixen? How about Mission Impossible?
Hagen's has over 24,000 movies to choose from, including all the latest new releases, your all-time favorites, and the largest collection of classic movies in the state. Plus, a membership at Hagen's allows you to call ahead and reserve movies. That's why everyone comes to Hagen's.
Do you have the movie Kingpin? I really like that movie.